people were trying to get students into predominantly white schools, like State, Ole Miss, Southern, and other places, that they felt could survive. So you were somewhat encouraged to do that. So rather than stay at Jackson State, I'd already been accepted at Ole Miss, no scholarship, nothing like that. I went to Ole Miss. So it was in the fall, I went up there, not straight out of high school. I spent the summer at Jackson and pulled the plug and went to Ole Miss in '67.
Okay.
You just said that people encouraged you to go to predominantly white schools if they thought you could survive. Is that right? Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
They thought you could make the grade if you could pass the courses.
Were these your teachers or your parents?
Counselors, people in the local community, they didn't push you to go do anything, but they encourage you. Why don't you go to State? Why don't you go to Ole Miss?
Why do you think they did that?
Because we needed to, if you want to say, integrate more of these schools. So when I got to Ole Miss, the group that came in with me, it made about 30 black students in the class, on the whole university. So the year before we got there, it was maybe 8, 10, something like that, black students at Ole Miss. This was in '67. We had some of my classmates from high school went out here, Helen Watt, Bertha Conley, I think Betsy Minor, some of the others. This was in '67, went out here. Now you gotta remember, my class, my high school class, was the class that desegregated Starkville High. And it happened in 1966. They took 8 to 10 guys out of our class at Henderson High School. And out of our class, our junior year, I was not one of them. Helen Watt was not. She finished number 1 in the class, I finished number 2. So they kept the 1 and 2 at Henderson High. And for my wife's brother, he was one of them. And sent them to Starkville High. Now several of those, not several, some of those guys came back to Henderson High. Maybe 3, 4 of them came back. Henry Ashford was another one that went over there. R.D. Harris, I believe Willie Harvey Johnson, who was the fireman here, the fire chief for a while. I believe he was one of them that went over, but he came back too, to Henderson High. But my brother-in-law, he stayed there. He graduated from Henderson High. So that was the first class. Now after that, of course, we left. They started sending kids in, like her youngest brother was one of the first kids to go into Overstreet, black kids or whatever. But the very first class that do any type of integration here of schools in this county was my class of '67, but they went over in '66 in the junior year. And so, but onesies and twosies of us went to Mississippi State, went to Ole Miss, and other places. Because the problem was, you had an adjustment problem when you went to these schools. I mean, you ate by yourself. You were the only black kid in the class. When you walked across campus, you were walking by yourself. So you had an adjustment. And then sometimes, my first year there, I had a white roommate. A guy named, what's his name? Whitman, from Henderson, Kentucky, was my roommate up there. And I'm sure the same, but a lot of kids that went out here lived at home and not on campus. Well, at Ole Miss, I lived on campus. Now, my second year there, my roommate was from Jackson, Mississippi, was a black guy. And we were roommates until we left there, until he left. He left before I did. And we both went in the Army together. So it was an adjustment problem. You just didn't encourage any kid at Henderson High School, you need to go to Ole Miss or you need to go to Mississippi State. You didn't do that. And sometimes the counselor would say, you sure that's what you want to do? And probably there were not a lot of people jumping out of the door to go to Mississippi State or to Ole Miss. I mean, they prefer to go to Jackson Alcorn, Mississippi Valley, and that's where most of my classmates went to school. So, a little bit different.